Linda?
Yes. All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to this edition of AARP Massachusetts Fraud Talk Tuesdays. We're here the second Tuesday of each month from 12 to 12:30, where we discuss a different scam or fraud, and we talk about how you can protect yourself and your family from becoming victims. My name is Linda Ruiz. I'm a volunteer with AARP Massachusetts. Our guest today is Phil Abraham. Phil is also a volunteer with the AARP Massachusetts Speakers Bureau. When it comes to charities, Americans are very giving. Unfortunately, this opens the door for the criminals called scammers. Phil is going to discuss questions you should ask, how to verify if a charity is legitimate, and how to avoid being scammed when it comes to charitable giving. You may have joined us today with questions already in mind. If you have, please put them in the Q&A at the bottom of the page usually. Open that screen and type your questions in there. We will address them at the end of the presentation. Many of them may be answered during Phil's talk. This session will be recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording and a page with the links and number of resources after the presentation. Feel free to share those with family and friends. So, good afternoon, Phil. Thank you for being here. And where would you like to start?
First, we have to realize there are many legitimate and worthwhile charities. The question is how to make sure our money, and I include myself in that, our money goes to legitimate ones. And I talk about money and property, and I'll talk about that later. You're feeling generous and decide to donate to a cause you believe in, but later find out the charity was a scam. You're not alone. Many people fall victim to charity fraud each year. As Linda mentioned, Americans are some of the most generous people in the world when it comes to charity. In the year 2023, we gave over $374 billion to charity. In addition, charitable donations help healthcare, research, education, the arts, and many other causes. We also donate to victims of natural disasters.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely want my money to go to provide assistance, not to a thief. What can we do to protect ourselves?
It's possible to make sure that your donations go to organizations that are generally serving by learning to recognize how scammers operate and by taking a few precautions before handing over your check, cash, credit card information, bitcoins, or property. Examples of property are things like old cars, donations of clothing we don't even think about, but everything adds up to scammers. We treat this scam like we treat all those scams we talk about. I'm actually a Fraud Watch speaker and talk about frauds and scams to various groups. Charitable scams is like all the other scams that we deal with. And many of the same things that we look for in other scams, we have to look for when we talk to charitable scams as well. Um, Basically, the scammer is looking to relieve you of all your money, and we have to learn to be skeptical of things that we deal with. So, first off, scammers appeal to your emotion with heart-wrenching stories. With the recent hurricanes in Florida and the Carolinas, to the wildfires in California, to the tornadoes across the Midwest, there is no lack of tragic stories. Giving is very often an emotional decision, not necessarily a logical one, and scammers rely on this emotional trigger. We talk about the fact that in our scam presentations, they try to get you under the ether. This is the scammer's term that they talk about. It gets you into a heightened emotional state. You are thinking emotionally and not logically. It's a very powerful topic or tactic. Scammers use our goodwill to line their pockets. Second, like genuine nonprofits, scammers are also reaching you through telemarketing, direct mail, email, phone calls. text messages, and door-to-door solicitations. They might also make appeals on social media and create well-designed websites with deceptive names that mimic legitimate charities. Next, scammers capitalize on disasters and humanitarian efforts. Photos of people trying to rebuild their lives after a natural disaster or in an area of conflict can make us open our hearts and wallets, and actually does make us open our hearts and wallets. While these events are in the news, questionable operators know that the iron is hot. In addition to natural disasters, imposters also focus on cancer and other diseases. People are likely to give without question and then may give to the first request they receive. We've all seen the pictures in North Carolina. I have a friend who I spoke to yesterday, and he's down in North Carolina trying to rebuild. These hurricanes took place 6, 7 months ago, and the damage is still there. But we only saw the pictures from the first few days. And the story that piqued our interest, which I thought was strange, was a group of women who were there for a bachelor party talking about trying to walk down the mountain. And I see Linda smiling a little bit at that. But they were trying to walk down the mountain, and it took them hours to walk down. What people don't realize is that this still exists there and hasn't been taken care of. And as my friend said, out of sight, out of mind, and the next disaster comes up. And one of the important things we can also realize is that we don't have to give money. We can give time. And time to charities is also a valuable thing, and that can't be scammed. So that's one of the things to think about. Scammers will mimic a genuine charity's name. Scammers often mimic the name of familiar, trusted organizations to deceive donors. While AARP doesn't recommend any one particular charity or anything else, but the example could be instead of AARP, it could be AAPR, an organization for aged, older people. We have to be very careful to make sure that the lettering is right, that the name is right when we give money, because otherwise they're going to try to find a way of thinking and we're just going to give it to them. Be careful if you are in an internet search for a charity. The first results that you come up with are not necessarily what you're looking for. Carefully look at the name and spelling on the URL before you click on it. The other thing to note is the first time you click on the internet, most of the sites will say ad or sponsored. These are not the legitimate sites. You have to go down and get away from the ad or the sponsored sites. The other thing is when you get an email from somebody, when they talk about looking at the URL address, is that I've gotten things from a major company, and when I look at the address, it goes to John Jones at Comcast.net or something like that. Be careful what you're dealing with and always look at these things because you never know what's legit and what isn't. And again, be skeptical. My feeling is if you aren't sure, don't click on anything. It's the best way to deal with it. Whether through a text message, an email, or a phone call, scammers pretend that you have given before. So scammers often exploit those with cognitive limitations who may not remember previous donations. They contact people, or they may imply that they've already made a pledge in the past and that they're just calling to follow up to see where the donation is. Legitimate charities don't do that. The one caution is that even with legitimate charities, once you give money, many charities will often say, "You've given money, could you give again?" So you have to be careful because this is mimicking what legitimate charities do. And finally, scammers, in addition to online crowdfunding, one of the most common is a GoFundMe page. But there are others, including Fundable, Crowdfunder, and all sorts of names that I've never even heard of, to be honest with you. But so many of them are out there. You may get a plea on social media to help someone who has had a devastating illness such as cancer, has lost their home due to fire, or lost a loved one and needs help in dealing with funeral expenses. Anyone, and I mean anyone, can set up an account on crowdfunding site and post a fake story or photos. After setting it up and getting donations, they're gone in a blink of an eye with the money. If you decide to donate to crowdfunding sites, make sure you know who set it up. And if it's someone you know, check with them to make sure you know about it. One of the examples I was talking with Linda about beforehand was a very famous site that took place about 6 years ago in New Jersey. A homeless man was stopped, and a woman evidently was out of gas, needed money for gas, and he gave her $20. And it made the national news. And it was a heartwarming story. Most of the time in crowdfunding, you get somebody died or somebody has cancer or this or that. And this was one where you saw a person doing something remarkable. And everybody rushed to give money. There were over 14,000 donors who gave money, and they gave close to $400,000. The money was collected. The woman and her husband were the ones who set up the GoFundMe page, and people donated readily. The man ended up getting $75,000 approximately. The woman and her husband got about 320,000. And when I read from the site, they talk about the fact that they spent their money on a BMW, a New Year's Eve trip to Las Vegas, gambling in casinos, Louis Vuitton handbags, and other items. The police ended up catching up with the woman because the homeless man, complained about it. And the police caught up, and the woman ended up spending or got 3 years in jail. And the husband got a jail sentence too. Unfortunately, the remarkable thing about it was the homeless man had never given any money. The woman came up with a story, involved the homeless man in it, and he unfortunately did receive some time, but it was more going to a rehab program. This was published on national news. Everybody thought it was legitimate. After all, if it's on TV, it's got to be legitimate. It wasn't. And $400,000 got scammed. And again, where the money went, I always talk about it goes down into a black hole. So it's kind of difficult to deal with. The other thing to realize too is that GoFundMe pages are not legitimate charitable deductions. There's no 501c3, as IRS calls it. Major organizations like AARP have 501c3 designations. You give the money to them, and then it's all considered to be a charitable deduction, and you can deduct it on your income tax. You give money to a GoFundMe page, and that's it. It's just the money is not there, and you can't claim it on income tax for anything. So that's one of the things to be worried about.
Well, thank you, Phil. That is remarkable. Remarkable story. It was very ingenious of her. I have heard about GoFundMe, certainly. I did not know there were so many others. There are apparently lots of crowdfunding sites to be aware of. Can you give us any tips about what the warning signs might be so we don't get sucked into one of these?
Well, on this, we go back to our normal talks about frauds and scams. Some of the red flags that we deal with a charity uh, is that first off, you have to do something immediately. There are three elements that scammers use, and we don't like to use the word scammers now. We like to use the word criminals because
Mm,
that's what they are. They're not con artists. They're not artists in any way. They are criminals. We always mention about your emotions. The second element is urgency. You must do this now. For instance, we have a donor who will match your gift if you give now. And it sounds great. And by the way, there are many legitimate businesses which will say to their employees, we will match your donation. That's fine. That's a very legitimate type of thing. But on the other part, you have scammers will say, if you give money now, we have a donor who's offering $500,000 and will match your gift. It sounds nice. And legitimate charities, unfortunately, have gotten involved in that a little too, because I've seen charities before saying, we have a gift and we will, the money will be doubled. But scammers use it too to give you a sense of urgency. To me, you always have to be focused. You have to sit back and say, is this what I want to do now? It may be true, but don't let it control who you are and what you do. You have to make that decision. A thank you for a donation that you don't recall making is another red flag. Scammers making you think you've already given to a cause and are now looking for another donation is a common tactic used by unscrupulous fundraisers. A third red flag is requesting payment by cash, gift card, bitcoins, or wire transfers. And we use the term bitcoins, and this has just come into our vocabulary because if you go to many stores now, some of them like Cumberland Farms or grocery stores, there are machines that look like ATM machines. They're actually Bitcoin machines, and you can put money in. And unfortunately, you direct the money to go to the scammer or the criminal. And my comment is it goes into a black hole. You can't trace it. And actually, AARP is now filing legislation in the state of Massachusetts to have controls put on these Bitcoin machines to protect us. So this is one of the things we have to be mindful of. Uh, that's what we're dealing with. The other thing is what I talked about property was the fact that I remember years ago giving a car away for charity. Some of the charities are legitimate, some of them aren't. You give money for clothing and you put them in these machines that are sitting by the roadside. Some are legitimate, some are not. You go to places that have offices and warehouses, fine, they will take the clothing, they will sell the clothing, but the money goes to the charity. You go to these things that just are machines and they put them out at the various locations and the host site gets some money for it. These are things where they're keeping everything. The individuals are getting nothing. So basically, they make requests based on trust and affinity. Scammers will also say, well, we're both veterans. We should help the veterans out. We belong to the same community, the same faith. Uh, they have similar family histories when they start talking to you. When it comes to that, that's we have to be careful. One of the things that it deals with is some of the scams they call the police scams, where somebody calls up and says, "We are from the benevolence." Well, they aren't. Police unions don't work that way. And the other thing is what you have to look at is how much money is actually going to the genuine charity and how much money isn't. And the other thing is we follow the same celebrity. Don't be fooled. Sit back a little bit, look at things and say, is this what I want to do?
So, with all these different angles that they're using to get us hooked, how do we make sure we're giving to a genuine charity? How do we verify it?
Okay. One of the things I always say in fraud conversations we have is don't answer a phone call unless you know actually who you're talking to. Anybody legitimate will leave a message and you can then decide if you want to call back. But first, be proactive. Instead of waiting for a charity to call you, think about who you want to give money to and what research or anything else you want to support. I have a list of charities that I give to every year. I can get hundreds of other calls, and some of them say, well, we're part of that organization, but we need money in addition. Well, I give it to the organization because I know the organization is legitimate. And that's what we have to deal with. Examine a charity's website and look for specifics about its programs. And we also have to realize that a lot of people in our age range don't look at websites, they don't look at computers. So, what I've always asked for is send me some literature, send me something in writing that I can look at. Uh, and that's what they don't do. And when you don't get something, you know you've dealt with a scammer. And one of the things I like to look at when I'm reading it, how much money goes to the beneficiary, how much money goes to the administration. You'll find that a lot of these things, you will have 25% to beneficiaries and 75% to administration. So that's what we have to be careful about. There was a charity where I lived in Baltimore before, which collected coats for people in the wintertime. And they made a statement, and I thought it was wonderful. 100% of whatever we collect goes to the beneficiaries. We cover the administrative costs from our own pockets. That's a true charity. And that's what we have to look for. My feeling in my own mind was I want a charity that gives at least 75% to the beneficiaries. I don't want a charity that's spending money on going to the Bahamas or taking nice dinners or buying luxury cars for themselves. I want a charity that's actually giving money to who it belongs to and who needs it. Uh, So that's what we have to do when we look at these things. And hopefully we don't have to be a Sherlock Holmes, but there are valuable websites out there letting us know some of these statistics. And they include Charity Navigator, Charity Watch, Better Business Bureau, and my favorite, I'm a retired attorney, so I always look to the Attorney General's office. And I remember calling them up here in Massachusetts, and they have individuals who are volunteers who will field the calls. Charities in Massachusetts have to be registered. If they're not registered, they may not be legitimate charities. And they can tell you, and they can probably turn you on to whoever can help out. Charity Navigator rates charities according to their leadership, culture, finances, and areas. You can search for a charity and see the rating points yourself. Charity Watch has a list of top rated charities. Again, you can search by charities and make an assessment of how effective. The same thing with Better Business Bureau. The thing to be careful about is get the correct name of the charity you're looking for. The problem is if it's one word off, you're not going to find the real charity. And that's one of the other things which we also noticed in fraud is that many times a business will write to you and the word of the name of the charity, like charity itself, will be spelled Chairty. It's very interesting. A lot of the scammers have misspellings and things. No charity, no organization spells their name wrong when they're legitimate. So that's one of the things. The other thing we talk about is not using is to use a credit card. With a credit card, you can check your statements, and that's one of the things you have to be careful about. I check my statements usually probably at least once or twice a week just to see what's in there. The problem is when you give somebody your credit card and they have the right to charge on it, you never know what's going to be charged. And you want to make sure that what's being charged is what you authorize to be charged. The other thing you have to deal with is it's better to use a credit card than a debit card. Debit cards are simply a means of withdrawing funds from your account immediately. Credit cards are actually giving you an interest-free loan, which allows you to have time to dispute it. It's not out there. The same thing for the Bitcoins. You put it in, it goes out, you're gone. So banks will reach out to the problem and help try to help you. The other thing which I say is never give them access to your checking account. It's a dangerous thing to do when people have access to it because they can write things and you never know what's happening until later on. So again, check your statement there. You can check your bank statement every day just to make sure that things are dealing with things in a proper manner. The other thing is don't share personal information and financial information such as your social security number, date of birth, bank account number, or to anyone seeking a donation. They have no need for that information. The only thing they need is, in essence, your credit card information if you're giving it to them. If you're making a gift over the phone, that's it. If you want a receipt for your thing, all they need is your email address. The rest of the information is just a way if a scammer gets in uh, to be able to tap into your resources. In essence, when you give that information, it's like the scammer hitting the lottery. You're giving them all the ability to take everything that you have. And while maybe you can get some of it back, you have a long uphill struggle. It's not worth it to be able to do things like this. It's better to be cautious and deal with things in a proper manner. The other thing is generally I send a check to uh, the charity that I want. I get something in writing, I get a slip, I send it out to the charity. Therefore, they don't have access to my checking account, they don't have access to my credit card. And the one hint we also tell people now is when you're writing a check because of check washing, use a gel pen. It's much more difficult to wash. Scammers have the ability to wash the check out with regular ink. With a gel pen, it's much harder to do. So, these are little tips that we think about. It's a $5 suggestion that can save you thousands of dollars in the long run.
Great. Um, so those really sound valuable. I hadn't heard the gel pen one before. That's good. I'm gonna adopt that one. That's easy to fix, certainly. It really sounds like those websites are very useful too, where you can really go on and investigate a little and check to make sure that your money's going. I mean, we're careful with our money. We want to make sure it's going where we would like it to do. Are there other steps we can take? I mean, this sounds good.
Well, we talk about again, checking the state licensing, checking your credit card company. And one of the things we talk about is avoid giving information through third parties. That was the policeman scam type of thing. And there are many legitimate ones there, but try to make sure that it's the actual organization you're dealing with and not somebody collecting for that organization. That's a third party, not how police departments work. The best advice, as I gave out before, is don't answer the phone unless you know who it is.
Yeah, thanks. That's I most of the time I don't want to talk to them. So thank you. Bill, if I have been victimized, if one of these things got me locked in and has gotten money from me, any scam, what should I do? Should I report it?
Well, the first thing to do, especially if you're using your credit card, is report to your credit card company. There are rights that you have, and they may be able to help you and may be able to stop what's happening. Also, report it to the FBI Crime Complaint Center, referred to as ICs. And I think we have that listed. It's listed in here. You could see it. Um, but report it to local police too. I mean, the more you report it, hopefully, the more that they will be thwarted in their efforts. That's what we have to deal with. Your state attorney's office takes reports of charity scams as well, as do government agencies. Sometimes the Secretary of State offices and departments in various consumer protection divisions will end up dealing. Report to the local police. Unless authorities know about a scam, they can't do anything about it. And as evidenced by the scam in New Jersey, where the people got jail time, it was the state police and the local police who got involved. So yeah, it's not necessarily something that's an easy fix, and it's not going to happen all the time, but it's something that can help. And of course, the final thing is AARP Fraud Watch Network also offers group support sessions to help you deal with the emotional trauma that you're experienced by being victimized by fraud. The helpline can help you deal with the resource. One of the things we have learned is that when people get robbed, everybody says poor person. When people get scammed, they always go, "Oh, how dumb you can be." You aren't. You are the same as a victim of a robbery, and you need to have that support that goes with you. And AARP Fraud Line can help with that.
Thank you. That's right. We don't want to be embarrassed and keep it quiet. We want the information out there to help other people to know what's being done and to avoid it and shut these people down. Before we finish up with some resources, Dennis, I know you're in the background there. Do we have some questions in the question and answer panel?
Let me check and see if there are any. Let me stop sharing for a second. There are there are a couple. Yes, here's a question. It says, I get those recorded statements about Breast Cancer Coalition, American Police Coalition, Coalition, PACs, uh, and they give 10% or less to charities. That's what you talked about, Phil. That you need to know how much they're actually giving to the folks.
Right. You don't want to finance somebody's lifestyle. You want to finance research, you want to finance aid to these people. And if you're only getting 10% to them, that's not what you want. That's why look for major organizations, especially that are out there that'll do something like this. So it's not something where you need the call. The call may spark an interest in you to give money, but in the reality, once that interest is sparked, find an organization that you trust.
So let's go back to the resources. And Linda, you want to run through these?
Sure. So, as Phil explained, there are a lot of organizations that can provide information to help us to evaluate. Actually, can you go back to that page, Dennis?
Yeah, I certainly will.
Thank you.
And
That can help us to evaluate a charity that's looking for a donation from us to see, first of all, are they legitimate? And second, what percentage of the money that we donate is actually reaching the target that we are trying to assist? So, charitywatch.org, the Better Business Bureau runs give.org, so they also are a resource for us. And Charity Navigator is one of the big ones. They've been around forever. Apparently, they sometimes will adjust to, are now rating on additional categories. There's quite a bit of information about the charity, how much that they use for fundraising, how much they use for administration, how much actually goes to the intended targets, which is really great. And you also, can certainly get in on there, and a lot of them will lead you to others. There are a lot of other um, charity watch type things that are out there. So by all means, do some research and reporting. The states keep lists. There is a list here that what they're showing on this page, which will go to you, is a list of the charity regulators listed by state. So you can check. A lot of times I try to give to local organizations. A lot of the time I donate to my local police department rather than going to different places, and they are regulated by state. So if they're in state, they are known and regulated. The FBI keeps track as much as possible. We need to report it in order for them to address it. And locally, we can go to the Attorney General's office, charities at mass.gov, and there's additional information as well as links there for additional information. And there is a phone call included here, so you will get a resource page sent to you at the end, along with the copy of the presentation. So, yeah, Dennis, next.
And the last page, if you want to hear about a perfect scam, AARP has in the Fraud Watch Network something called a perfect scam, and there is one out there on charitable scams you can look at. Free online support systems sessions. Phil mentioned that. By clicking this, you can sign up, because we're going to deal with, when we've been victimized, we deal with the money loss, but we also deal with the emotional trauma, and that's what the support groups help you through. And if you're interested in the other Fraud Talk Tuesdays that we have run over the last 5 or 6 months, you can click on this link here and go to and view those in the past. As Phil mentioned, for any type of fraud, if you want to report a fraud or just find out if something is a fraud, you can call the Fraud Watch helpline at 877-908-3360, and check out the AARP.org/fraud website. That's the Fraud Watch Network. And as a final thought here, if you have been a victim of a scam and would like to share your story as part of our Fraud Talk Tuesdays, you can always contact Polly Hunt at mhunt@aarp.org. And before we quit, one more quick question. Adeline said that many people have Alexa, and that she asks Alexa what percent of overhead is for the charity that she's looking to donate to. And if it's low, she doesn't go that route. So, but I really think that the 3 websites that we talked about, the Charity Watch, Charity Navigator, and the Better Business Bureaus, are great ones to start with and get a sense. So I think we are finished. Any final thoughts for next month, Linda?
Well, thank you, Dennis, for explaining and giving us that additional information. And thank you, Phil, for the valuable information you provided today. I know I'm going to check some of those things. And certainly to everyone who's joined us, you're all welcome to tune in next month. Again, second Tuesday, that's May 8th. We will be joined by Danielle Schrag from the U.S. Postal Service or Inspection Service. She will be discussing various postal scams that could be lurking in your mailbox. Learn how to identify and protect yourself from mail fraud and other types of postal scams. Danielle will share practical tips on how to safeguard your personal information and discuss what steps to take if you suspect you have been targeted or are being targeted. And what to keep in mind when you're hearing all these nuggets. If you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam. So thank you so much for joining us all today, and hopefully we'll see you next month.